6.8, public hearing, consideration of proposed resolution to adopt amendment to the health and safety element of the Lake County General Plan. And
How's it going, Kim?
we've got Maria Turner. And
Good morning.
all right,
Good morning. Yes. Good morning.
still morning.
Excellent. This item is a public hearing to adopt a general plan amendment to the text of the general plan to update reference to the latest version of the local hazard mitigation plan. There is state law, AB 2140, that requires this update to the general plan after every update of the local hazard mitigation plan. To not do so in a timely manner could compromise our ability to qualify for assistance in the future in some different grants. When the board adopted the local hazard mitigation plan, in that resolution, there was a reference to making this change to the safety element of the general plan. However, according to state law, an update to the general plan requires a noticed public hearing. And so that's why we're doing it now. Instead of just a reference in that past resolution, it's now abundantly clear to the state that we are coming into compliance with AB 2140 through this proposed resolution.
Questions? Anyone from the public? All right, anyone on Zoom? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the board for, I think it's action,
I'll offer
right?
the resolution.
Resolution has been offered.
Snap.
It's a different one. Okay. All right. Supervisor Owen,
Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier,
Aye.
Supervisor Rasmussen,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska, and Supervisor Crandall.
Aye. All right, resolution has passed. 500. Thank you very much. We will move on to our next item on the agenda, and that is the presentation of Lake County 2050 update. And
Thank you.
Director Turner.
Mireya Turner, Community Development Director. I also have the Deputy Administrator, Shannon Walker-Smith, who will be doing our tech. During your last break, we did pull up the GIS web map viewer that, let me start at the beginning. The purpose of today's hearing is to update the Board of Supervisors on recommendations from the Local Area Plan Advisory Committee that are specific to land use or mapping changes. The land use or mapping changes are most significantly impactful on the environmental review that we're conducting this year. And so we wanted to bring those to you today to see if there is any board direction, specifically any strong opposition to any of the recommendations that were approved by the Local Area Plan Advisory Committees, or our LAPACs. These recommendations also went in front of the General Plan Advisory Committee in two meetings, and one of the recommendations from the General Plan Advisory Committee was support of all LAPAC approved recommendations. We are getting the web map viewer updated or up on the screen for you, and Shannon will go through these. We're going to start with land use designation amendments. There were a few in each of the 8 planning areas. After that, we will go on to a PDF or a PowerPoint slides that were shown to the General Plan Advisory Committee regarding any recommended changes to community growth boundaries and planning area boundaries. While Shannon's zooming in, this is part of our Lake County 2050 project to update the general plan, which is most of our county-wide elements or chapters, as well as an update to all local area plans. We have 8 planning areas in the county. And the meetings of the LAPACs took place in October, November. They were held virtually as well as in person. The in-person meetings were in the Board of Supervisors chambers as well as different locations within the planning areas.
To switch places with you. Okay. Eyes aren't what they used to be.
While she's zooming in, we're going to start with the Cobb Mountain area.
Mine's not loading.
Land use designation amendments in the Cobb area
It's not on here.
included areas, let's start with Hoburg's Resort. The former Hoburg's Resort that really killed us all, that we lost it in the Valley Fire, has remained undeveloped. And the LAPAC recommended that area specifically for future housing. Okey-dokey. Good. Yeah, you'll see them as those kind of downward pointing isosceles triangles area. That's Hoburg's. To the left, see that one that's in blue? That is currently a community pool, and that community would love to enlarge the amenities that they're offering there, including a future cafe or cafeteria, restaurant, possible like retail, like your swim rings, things like that. And so there, the LAPAC approved a partial, like creating a split zone there to allow for that type of retail and food service within that community pool area. At the very top, you see like a little kind of triangle. That is currently local commercial, and the LAPAC recommendation was to move it to community commercial to allow for additional, more appropriate, or they would think more welcoming commercial uses. So instead of a surveyor's office, an engineer's office, it would now offer maybe a community restaurant or something like that.
Switch it now. This is existing stuff. Existing.
Actually, I think they're okay. I don't think I have to walk them through it. I can do it just based off this Excel spreadsheet. But if you do have specific questions and you want us to zoom in, let us know. Oh, okay. And then if you go down into the south, let's go down into Sigler Springs. Should be, where are they? Oh, up and to the right. Yeah, sorry. My sense of direction, not that great. Anyway, you'll see a number of those 5 different parcels there that the Sigler Springs Community Revitalization Association recommended a change for those parcels to allow for a hamlet-style mixed-use neighborhood. Across the county, through all of the different surveys that we sent out to the public and got back, the public really supports the idea of mixed use. All around. So that mixed use would be an allowance of residential as well as commercial co-located onto a single parcel that's zoned commercial. Now, what you see right there is the Sigler Springs idea of their revitalization of their neighborhood that was also destroyed in Valley Fire. They'd like to build back not just as a subdivision of homes, but rather a more holistic, walkable neighborhood for all of those. See those beige parcels? Those are residential. But the ones in the middle then would have the option for mixed use. So like a local commercial, something that could offer that community more of a walkable neighborhood. And that's it for Cobb Mountain. Do we have any questions before we go on to Kelseyville?
No, but I like that.
Isn't it cool? Yeah, we're really excited about that idea. And the public was excited about mixed use because we're not thinking like we want to turn into the Bay Area with a gazillion apartments over all this retail or like a mall. We're thinking more like a residence above or behind a pizza place or a coffee place or different things like that, because we want to retain the rural character. That's a top priority around the whole county. But we also like the idea of getting housing closer towards commercial so that people aren't always driving all over the place. Into Kelseyville. Let's zoom in and go towards the northwestern quadrant, please. You'll see a number of magenta, eastern. Should have rehearsed this one, huh? Okay, so on the eastern, you see that number of magenta-lined parcels. This is where the LAPAC decided they'd like to focus higher density residential housing. And the reason is, you'll see that blue rectangle below it, that's all of our schools in Kelseyville. So they'd like to position higher density residential right where the kids can easily walk to schools, because the safe routes to schools is one of the ongoing goals and priorities in Kelseyville, so that our kids are not walking, along a lot of morning traffic congestion and parents trying to get their kids to school. Let's just place the housing there so they can just walk across the street. There's one other towards the real western side. You'll see that one, zoom in just a little bit on, it's kind of like a curvy looking rectangle right down there. Currently agriculture, it's an 8-acre parcel. The Kelseyville LAPAC recommended this to be switched over to medium density residential. Again, for its proximity to the highway and main roads. Housing was actually a pretty big topic of discussion in Kelseyville, because they are getting multifamily residential going on right now. And so they're recognizing that they wanted to be very deliberate in where they placed housing for this next 20-year period. Any questions on that? That's the end of Kelseyville's recommendations. Moving on to Lakeport. You're going to recognize Lakeport's shape of land use designation changes. Doing good, Shannon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Many of you will recognize that magenta
This is the
collection of multiple parcels as the old Cristalago project. This was big about, 10, 14 years ago. It was originally going to be a golf-centered community, then a wine-centered community. Nothing's ever happened, and the Lakeport LAPAC would like this to go back. Instead of being planned development residential and planned development commercial, they'd like it to go back to its original land use designation of rural lands. It's sloped, it's remote, it has no infrastructure, and so that's what it was before that project. Then secondly, there was a request from a property owner. Yep, zone it.
is it here?
Nope, it's down, it's to the right. It's to the east of Cristalago. I could see it. It's a teeny tiny little square. Yeah. That's over in the Walnut Drive. And it is a portion of a parcel that continues to the west. However, the area that continues to the west, where Shannon's showing the little arrow thingy, that has a high slope going up to the highway. The area that is within that little square is not as sloped, and the LAPAC approved a request to change just that flatter portion to medium density residential, which would match the adjacent parcel for the purpose of future housing going in there. Any questions on Lakeport?
Just a brief question. The area of Lakeport, is that within the potential city annexation?
No. The city annexation goes down to the South Main Street area. So you'll see that grayed out area in the city.
Yeah.
And the part to the southeast part of the city
Oh, we
is
were way
south-
north of that. Gotcha.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
The Lakeport planning area kind of curls around the city of Lakeport to the north with North Lakeport, which is where we have a lot of housing, to the west, going into Benmore towards the end of the county, and then curls around the city of Lakeport to the south as well.
Thank you.
It was also, just in case, that's not part of today's discussion, but the LAPAC also does support the annexation of South Main Street. But we'll get to that at a later meeting. Going into Lower Lake, please. Ooh, okay. Yes. Lower Lake, there are a number of parcels along Morgan Valley Road. They already have municipal water and sewer. And the LAPAC approved a request from a member of the public to change those from rural residential to suburban reserve. Rural residential allows for 5 to 10 minimum acres per parcel. Suburban reserve would allow for future subdivisions for housing purposes to minimum acre size of 1 to 3 acres. That does it for Lower Lake. Any questions on that one? We're going to move on to Middletown, please. I'm not calling you Vanna, but it's taking a lot of restraint. All right, Middletown. These are a little harder to pick out. Very good. All right. So let's start in the northern part. There are a few parcels here, a couple parcels here that are currently or either zoned or split zoned local commercial. The LAPAC approved the property owner's request to move that up to community commercial for allow for a wider variety of commercial development opportunities. To the south, you'll see, those parcels. Those are currently, I think that looks like rural residential and rural lands. The property owner presented a request to change that to something that would support commercial development. And there was a robust dialogue in the Middletown LAPAC, and they finally settled on resort commercial options. So the LAPAC recommendation is to change the land use designation from rural residential, rural lands to resort commercial. Anybody have questions on Middletown?
Where's that located?
That is, where is that located? It is on, wait. Yes, there you go. Yeah, just when you hit Butts Canyon, there's that ridge line right there. So they'd have to kind of go around that ridge line, and then behind that would be the flatter area.
Kind of by, is Black Oak Estates in that area?
Before you hit Black Oak, that's further down the road. This is like right off the road.
Behind the cemetery.
Yep. Very good. Thank you. Moving forward, unless we have any further questions, we'll go to the Riv. Going to the Riviera's area plan. Okay. Let's start at the top and go counterclockwise. The Riviera's LAPAC highly prioritizes finding areas for a public park. That is what is behind the recommendation between these three parcels. It'd be changing from their current land use designation to open space for future park use. To the southwest, other west. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll do this one anyway. Okay, no, we'll go do these. That one would be it is currently, I think, suburban reserve, and it would go towards residential for increased housing development there. Yeah, low density residential, consistent with the entire Riviera subdivisions. And then over there, yep, same thing. Currently suburban reserve would go to low density residential. That is it for the Rivieras. While Shannon moves over to the Lucerne area, we have a lot. So Lucerne is currently in the Shoreline Communities area plan, but there were a large number of parcels that are smaller. They're small and they're either zoned, let's see, let's go north. Well, we could start there. Okay, now you'll notice this part, no, go back to that. Right along 13th Street. Okay. This was in the 2008 general plan. This was an area of special study, kind of centering around the Lucerne Castle, which is that red area towards that side. And then going down towards the lake with 2 rows of parcels on either side of 13th Street changed to community commercial. Since 2008, we have had commercial development along 13th Street, but both of the other rows of parcels on the periphery on either side have remained residential. There's a problem. It's a challenge when you're in a residential use used parcel, and it got switched to community commercial because you become legal nonconforming and you cannot expand your residential use. That means no garages, no any residential expansion of use. Now, since both of those roads have stayed residential, the LAPAC recommended that we just take those back to residential, but keep the commercial core along 13th Street. That is the purpose of those. Let's go zoom out and go elsewhere.
And so where there's spots that are still residents on there? that
Yeah, they're all
stay-
still
they'll
just
stay.
residents.
And then on the other side where it's commercial, if there is a residence there, once someone moves out or something, then it becomes commercial. Is that how I heard it before?
Well, we do have an article that sort of governs legal nonconforming uses. Once that legal nonconforming use expires, which is usually after 2 years of non-use, then it does revert back to community commercial.
That's why, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Those changed to be consistent with their current use. I think they're medium density residential and they changed to industrial. Just to mirror, again, there was a little bit of cleanup going on with these recommendations to revert back to what has been the consistent use the entire last 20 years. All right, where else?
More shoreline.
More shoreline.
There's Nice and
Yep, let's go down to Clear Lake Oaks. There is, that's a community growth boundary. Keep going south.
Yeah.
Yep, there you go. Into the Keys and around that area. So there is a parcel on the plaza that has been identified as a great spot for a future hub, a community resilience center. And so they did recommend a land use designation from community commercial to public facilities, which would kind of pave the way for that one. It's at the plaza. And then you'll see, zoom in, I want to see, specifically right along the Keys. There's a whole string of those little bitty parcels in pink right there. Those are teeny tiny parcels. Some of them are zoned for medium or high density residential. And it's going to be very hard to build an apartment on that tiny little parcel right there. So the request is let's just revert that back to low density residential because that's a more appropriate use for a parcel, for parcels of that size. And then if you go towards the east, I don't know why I'm pointing, you can't see me, but there. So there was a lot of discussion in the Shoreline Communities LAPAC regarding preserving wetlands. And I don't know if you've been out near that area in the Clear Lake Keys right now, but it is a rookery gone crazy. There are cormorants and egrets and herons and everybody's nesting and the babies are yelling and it's just an amazing spot. So currently zoned for, I think, commercial.
it was commercial.
Yeah. The LAPAC would really like to see all of that preserved for resource conservation so the birds aren't disturbed while they're doing their spring thing. Then if you go across the highway to the north, you'll see those ag parcels. The recommendation is to change them from what they currently are, which is service commercial, but all that exists there right now are some really nice vineyards. So the LAPAC would like to see that reflect what its current use is and go towards agriculture. Additionally, one that you don't see reflected here, but is a correction of a loss that we have had, is to get all of our creeks and streams and riparian areas again identified as resource conservation. That was lost in the last mapping update, so that's a correction that we'd like to do with this one. I don't know, let's go look at those. Okay. Okay, currently medium density residential and service commercial to, what do we want them to be? Well, that's not changing. That's medium density residential and rural residential. Okay, to reflect current uses. And then lastly, zoom over to Scotts Valley. Scotts Valley is, oh yeah, sorry.
John, the area where John T. Klaus is supposed to be, is there going to be a need to rezone that for any, because considering it's going to be a park or anything like that, or?
Not necessarily. That is a county-led project, and the county is exempt from zoning ordinance.
Just making sure that's said.
Yeah. But that's a really good question. I'll store that one away.
No, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, we may do that as a cleanup, just so it's consistent.
Thank you.
That one, yep. So Scotts Valley, portions of it are currently still in the Upper Lake Nice planning area. That is the one that Shannon's highlighting right now is Kelly's Camp. It has a long history of KOA and then camp that run by, I think, Bob Kelly, who passed away. The Kelly's Camp closed down a number of years ago, and it's unable to be sold as a camp because of its floodplain areas. There's a difficulty rebuilding in that area. So the Upper Lake Nice LAPAC recommends that get moved back to rural lands, revert back to its original land use designation. That concludes land use designation changes. Any questions?
Did they talk about Blue Lakes possibly in some areas, making it public, or, because the public uses along Highway 20 and whatnot? I don't know if they discussed that at all, or no?
They did not discuss Blue Lakes.
We've had that conversation before with the folks at Blue Lakes about having a park there or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Well, you know what, though? We did have, I remember code enforcement talking about pergolas that were built on
Right.
R1.
Yes.
This would be actually an ideal time to do that. So when I watch this video again, I'm going to write that down for future reference, because that would be a nice way to solve that problem, so that community could then have their pergolas with no zoning conflict. Because they do use those parcels as sort of community gathering areas and launch points. Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't remember that myself. We'll get that on the list.
Didn't want to remember that.
The colleagues remind me of that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's exactly the kind of board direction that I'm looking for right now. Okay, then let's switch over.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely. Shannon's going to switch over to the community growth boundary and planning area boundary recommendations. So,
Oh, good. No, I did want to see, I have a community growth boundary question, but I just wanted to ask this question for public awareness. So these zone changes are coming a lot of times at the request of the property owner, but not always. So for example, the Hoburg's property, was any input taken or received from the property owner of changing the zoning?
great question. We are going to have an open house style meeting in the future and invite all of the property owners for any of these affected properties.
Are they going to be notified?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
We're reaching out to them through a mailer saying, your property's been identified for a land use designation change. And hopefully that will avoid another 20 years of people calling planning and saying, hey, y'all changed my zoning and didn't tell me about it. So
Yeah.
we're doing that differently this time.
Perfect.
If you click on the presentation link, that'll take us to those slides. Are there any other questions on land use designation changes?
Not seeing any. We actually-
I do, but I'm going to wait till the full presentation is over,
Okay.
just in case it's spoken of during that time.
Awesome.
You check while Shannon's getting that up and running. I'm going to see if there's anything I missed from my notes. Nope. So the LAPAC recommendations were presented to the GPAC, the General Plan Advisory Committee, in 2 different meetings in February. We also gave them an update on the Housing Action and Implementation Plan, but that's not part of my presentation today because we're working on that draft document, which will be presented to the board. I think it will be available to the public probably late spring. Nope. Skipping right over it. Excellent. Community growth boundaries. We had 2 LAPAC recommendations for community growth boundary amendments. Next slide, please. In Kelseyville, if you take a look up at that north part where you see the green outline, the magenta is the current community growth boundary. To the west, the green part was a request from the other west, yeah. A request from the property owner to include that in the community growth boundary because it was rezoned to industrial within the last, 10 years?
I think it was 3 years.
3 years, was it?
It was
I don't know. It was already done.
started over 10 years
Yes.
ago.
Yeah, right. And so just including that into the community growth boundary, which that means to amend your community growth boundary tells the county jurisdiction that this is where the community would like to see extensions of municipal infrastructure in the future. That's water and sewer for the purposes of increased housing development or commercial development or supporting industrial. Then over towards the east, that little corner right there, that already has municipal services, and we couldn't figure out why it wasn't in the 2008 community growth boundary adjustment. So we saw that as a correction. That is it for Kelseyville. Any questions before we go to Lower Lake? All right, next slide, please. Lower Lake. Again, the same parcels that were recommended to go from rural residential to suburban reserve already have municipal water and sewer, and so the LAPAC supported bringing those into the community growth boundary as well. That's it for community growth boundary
Where's
recommendations.
that located?
That's along Morgan Valley Road.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I'm guessing there's no community growth boundaries for Cobb because no sewer?
Correct. Community growth boundaries is where you'll focus your municipal services and for the purpose of higher density housing and higher impact commercial and industrial.
Supervisor Spotty.
So, thank you for that, and I have a couple of comments and questions. You mentioned a property going from ag to something else. Is there a process where that's going to go before LAFCO or does LAFCO do kind of like a RFR, whatever that is, a request for response on any changes? Because LAFCO's goal and purpose is to protect open land and agricultural land from becoming urban sprawl. So what's the process for that, and where does LAFCO fit into what you are planning to do when things are coming out of the ag zone and into something else?
We will notify LAFCO as we move forward as part of the review process. However, should any housing development take place and there is any sort of sphere of influence, like an annexation for a water district, that also goes straightly before LAFCO and is evaluated at that time.
True. So the community growth boundaries, I'm glad that was brought up because can you describe what the purpose of a community growth, unless that's exactly what you just stated? It's because we have communities, we have services, but for some reason, some of those communities don't seem to meet community growth boundaries, and I see community growth boundaries being utilized, for example, like cannabis, to protect from certain activities happening within community growth boundaries. I know you and I had a conversation yesterday. How do we apply certain protections to communities where obviously there is residential areas that have been historically there, but aren't provided similar protections that are being provided through the use of the community growth boundaries? Is there any other zoning or overlay or anything that can be accomplished to ensure that those communities are treated the same as other communities, other than they may not have sewer or they may not have other things? Because those are true communities, in my opinion. They just don't have access to all of the services in the same way.
Certainly. Currently in Article 27, there are limitations to which zoning districts are appropriate for different types of cannabis-related businesses. Specific to cultivation, some of their location limitations do include buffer zones from community growth boundaries. They're also not allowed in any residential district like R1, R2, R3, so that keeps them out of the neighborhoods that you would typically find in community growth boundaries as well. We do not currently have an overlay that would prohibit cannabis activities. Should the board decide that's something they would like to consider, I am happy to have that discussion when we are working on the draft ordinance to update cannabis regulations.
Okay. Then also, I guess I'll just be blunt. There's very subtle changes that are happening or that are being proposed. We're spending a lot of money to review our general plan. Last one updated was 2008. I'm going to make an assumption that we didn't necessarily scrap the previous general plan or zoning ordinance and start from scratch, and we probably made subtle changes as well. But we're dealing with a very different landscape today than we did before. We probably say it all the time, but for us, that change was 2015, where we recognized the impacts of climate change. And I'm not seeing that being implemented in how we are changing our zones to better protect, especially our community growth boundaries, which is why I started with the idea of community growth boundaries in order to protect where people live. I don't want to break the entire thing and start from scratch, but seeing open spaces, rural land, and rural residential in places that worry me about how it interacts with other things, specifically community growth boundaries. How do we incentivize growth in a way that can protect community growth boundaries, such as, and granted we can't force people to do it, but maybe there's ways to incentivize it, having agriculture with buffers surrounding community growth boundaries, to have green belts around our areas, because I'm not going to say that it's 100%, but typically house fires can be contained to a smaller footprint, while it's the WUI that really impacts us in a very negative way. How can we look at this general plan update to really implement strategies based on our experiences with climate change and how to best protect? Because I'm seeing little tiny changes, but I'm not seeing what I was hoping to see and what I would like to see in order to change our probably 50-year practice of how we approach land use, which has not necessarily changed all that much when we know we keep hitting the same issues again and again and again. So I don't know what the answer is, but I just wanted to put it out there that I would love to better understand what can be done. I don't want everybody to become non-conforming. That's definitely the worst thing that can happen. But at the same time, I don't feel what I'm seeing is necessarily, because we just had that presentation from Tara. That's part of the solution of protecting our communities, is that type of work. But at the same time, zoning is important to also try to incentivize the right type of communities to create more protections. And another example of this is our paper parcels. Our paper parcels are still pipe dreaming that there will be a residential subdivision built out in the future. This is a 1920 problem that we have yet to deal with and solve, and I would like to see what new zoning can be placed on there so we can eventually get something better, rather than suddenly tomorrow somebody coming to you and saying, hey, I want to drop a couple $100,000, get some water out there, get some sewer out there, and I want to build a house in the most dangerous of areas that you can build it when it comes to fire protection or things like that. So I would love to, I'm looking for more change than what's being proposed based on the comments that I just provided.
You want
If I may respond.
Yes, please.
Just hold on to your hat, because it's coming. What you're getting today is recognition of recommendations from the local area plans. These are community groups who have come together, and the purpose of the recommendations here are sort of our lessons learned over the last 20 years since the last general plan update, while looking at the future. Simultaneously, what's not before you today is our climate adaptation plan, which is in process as well, and the housing action and implementation plan, which does focus on future development options that would be more appropriate given today's climate. The Greenbelt development that you mentioned with ag surrounding our residential developments is one of our newer innovations that we've learned since watching the fires of 2015, how they'll come up to the edge of a vineyard and stop, or an orchard and stop. And so that is included in some of those lessons learned that you will see as we're going forward. So the fact that you're already aware of that and in tune, I find super exciting, because that's where we are right now. You will not see those sort of radical changes coming necessarily from the local area plan advisory committees at this point. However, you will see more of those innovations in the documents as they are coming, particularly our safety element, our circulation element, our housing element, well, later, the housing action and implementation plan. All of those are going to be informed by the results of our climate vulnerability analysis report and our climate adaptation plan.
Thank you.
Right there with you, yeah.
Supervisor Owen?
Okay, I had actually spoke with Miss Maria or sent her an email, I don't remember which, pertaining to some issues that had been brought to me about the area plans, and I know some of them weren't techy enough to be able to get on Zoom to in Lower Lake and some of the areas. So I had asked and requested, and I think you
I
got back
acknowledged
with
your
me.
email.
Yes, you did, and stated that that would work for you. But bringing her, and I just wanted to bring it out for the others as well, the other supervisors in the other areas as well, to have your team or you conduct these meetings, the area plan meetings in those areas, in those locations, in a town hall type setting, and they would be opened to the public so that people could come and attend, as we did back in like 2008, where people could attend them, and that they would be on Zoom as well. So just bringing that forward.
Given our grant deadlines and restrictions, last October/November, in 4 weeks, we held 46 local area plan advisory committee meetings. It would not have been humanly possible for me to hold all of those in person in the planning areas, and that's why we chose a combination of virtual and on-site, both at the board chambers and at the planning areas. That's because we had to cover an awful lot of material in a very short period of time. We did gather great public input, and we're using that to work on our draft local area plans, which should be out later this year. Our approach this next time, since we're actually going to have drafts to work from and not, it'll be something for the whole group to focus on, and we'll distribute those widely for the purpose of gaining public input. Our goal or our plan this next time, since local area plan advisory committees were not on the original scope of work, and so that I am the one doing them, our goal is to team up with our municipal advisory committees and councils around the lake and have combined LAPAC and municipal advisory committee meetings. Should we have to add additional meetings, I will do my best to keep them in person and in the planning area, but with 8 different LAPACs, 8 different draft local area plans, I will do so to the best of my ability while retaining my sanity. So I can't guarantee they'll all be in person, but I will definitely take advantage of those municipal advisory committees, because that's where our public is already looking for as an avenue for their input.
And I really appreciate that. And I do understand the sanity portion as well.
Kind of like what little I do have left.
But I know that there are people that will.
That is true. Yeah. Shannon's reminding me that when we did do those in-person meetings, we had very little success in having hybrid meetings. So we'll absolutely do the best we can. But for anyone in the public who wants to participate or send in their comments at any time, they can come see me. Mm-hmm. They can send me an email. They can go on to our lakecounty2050.org website and always send in their comments that way too. So it is essential. The absolute highest priority of the Lake County 2050 process is to gather that public input.
Real quick, you mentioned back to, I think it was community growth boundaries, you talked about cannabis activities. That's cultivation or like different dispensaries and things like that. Does that, what you're saying, does that have anything to do with medicinal? Because I know that there's been issues in some of the community growth boundaries in different areas where they thought that because it's a community growth boundary and no cultivation is to take place there, there would be folks with their medicinal plants, and then there's the idea that that shouldn't have happened there, but we were explaining to them that we can't necessarily, you know, hinder anyone from medicinal grows, if you will. And I don't know if that's
There's a
part of it.
very clear differentiation between commercial cannabis and adult or medicinal personal use cannabis. The state does allow for this personal or medicinal use cultivation to take place within a residential area. We have regulations currently in Article 26 that help to control that. We have had issues where people have abused that for commercial purposes. And so that's been keeping code enforcement busy and will continue to do so. We are going to create clearer delineation while still aligning with state law for personal and personal medicinal cultivation uses. We are also identifying ways that we can strengthen our public outreach and education and make it a lot more clear when we do encounter these either authentic or, you know, kind of sneaking by, trying to work the system grows in residential areas so that we'll have quicker enforcement and correction of those issues.
Thank you for explaining that.
My pleasure.
Sure, because I know that that's been brought up. And
Another thing we should make very clear is that typically the buffers from residential areas are for cultivation activities. The other uses are cannabis-related businesses such as manufacturing, processing, things like that, retail. Those can occur currently within community growth boundaries.
thank you. I know Supervisor Sabatier, you had your pen up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that if there is a need to assist in those future meetings, we have the technology now to go anywhere in Lake County and be able to stream and do hybrid. So it was because of some of our situations that we encountered that we purchased that extra technology.
Great.
We are going to make full use of it.
Did you have your pen up?
Thank you.
No, I forgot, but I did offer as well, when you're in our district, that I would be willing to help with whatever you need.
I greatly appreciate that offer. We do rely on the supervisors as our conduits to the public as well, and we're using every tool possible.
And I really appreciate you making this, available for them.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll move on to planning area boundary amendments, and then I want to just highlight the GPAC recommendations, and I'm out of here, unless you guys have input. Planning area boundaries. Okay, so we have 8 planning areas. Let's just go straight to the first one. Planning area boundaries do not mean that by amending these boundaries, we focused on what community do you really align yourself with. It's kind of an intuitive thing. It doesn't affect school districts, fire districts, funding, nothing. It's just which local area plan will your community be included. Upper Lake Nice. Okay, that black line is going through Scotts Valley. Currently, half of Scotts Valley is in Upper Lake Nice planning area. The other half is in Lakeport. The LAPACs both agreed that let's amend that. I'll go back to that other one. Let's amend to include all of Scotts Valley within the Lakeport local area plan, except for the portion of Blue Lakes. So I don't even know if you can see that one. Well, anyway, so the recommendation is to include all of Scotts Valley. Moving on to Lakeport and Upper Lake. Moving over to Lower Lake and Middletown. So you'll see a dip. If you look along that white line, that white boundary with that black line in there, currently there's a subdivision there in that little triangular dip area that's divided between the Lower Lake and the Middletown. The recommendation is let's include the whole subdivision in one local area plan, just to be tidy. Let's see, what else?
Which area plan are you putting it in?
It's going to go into Lower Lake.
And that's the Hofacre area?
Yes.
Or is that, okay.
Yes, I think that is it. Next one. See all those sort of scribbly little teeny black lines? Those are actually town names or road names. Those aren't recommendations. The solid black line is what we're looking at. I was starting to get confused, so I just wanted to clear that up. So this new boundary then, that is that white one that follows Socrates Mine Road. This is just more intuitive. It would then be included in the Cobb Mountain area to include areas that just sort of self-identify with Cobb Mountain.
Does that follow the district boundary? And
It actually closer follows the community, the Cobb Area Council boundaries.
which I think is the district boundary too after redistricting?
We do not align with supervisorial districts because this is a 20-year general plan and supervisorial districts change with every census. So, yeah.
And where was
I
it?
think it's,
It was just this hard line up there in the, yeah, right there. Then there is another one. Is there another? Oh, shoot. There's another Cobb Mountain. No, it's the one that adds Siegler Springs into it. So it also more closely aligns with the Cobb Area Council boundaries.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that's, yeah, there you go. That's it. Cobb and Lower Lake.
Sorry.
We're using a previous set of slides. Sorry, we're kind of moving around. Okay, so that one, see that white triangle, hypotenuse? That would then include the Siegler Springs community within the Cobb Mountain area. They're currently in Lower Lake. Next slide. Okay. Cobb Mountain, Kelseyville. Oh, right. So you'll see that diagonal white line. That is giving part of Cobb Mountain that's just along the Highway 175 corridor over to Kelseyville. And both LAPACs were amenable to that. Good. Next one. Upper Lake Nice Shoreline Communities. Okay, there was robust discussion about the town of Lucerne. Should the town of Lucerne remain in shoreline communities, which includes Lucerne, Glen Haven, Clear Lake Oaks, Double Eagle, Spring Valley, High Valley, and the Gooseneck part of Clear Lake area? Or should it go over to the Upper Lake Nice planning area? This was discussed there was public input submitted by the Eastern Regional Town Hall, and there was a meeting in December at the Central Regional Town Hall, which is Lucerne and Lucerne areas, to discuss it. And the Central Regional Town Hall made a recommendation to move Lucerne from the shoreline communities over to the Upper Lake Nice planning area. So I think we'll think of a better name. Instead of the Upper Lake Nice Lucerne planning area, we'll probably maybe think of something catchier for that in the future. And so that is the recommendation of of both LAPACs, shoreline communities and Upper Lake Nice. And that concludes our planning area boundary amendment discussion. Any questions?
Supervisor Sabatier?
Thank you. Just a quick question, because I know in the original shoreline communities, it did include the city of Clear Lake. Are we carving that out, or is it still kind of staying in there?
Both cities have their own general plan.
Yeah.
And so it was, so we are correcting that by carving out the city of Clear Lake because they're their own jurisdiction.
I felt like it was a remnant of a pre-1980 status before it became a city.
Yes.
Supervisor?
Yeah, I have a question on the Middletown line boundary to the north shortening and us losing some area there at Socrates rather than it going up a little further. So where does that come from?
That discussion followed what seemed to the LAPAC to be a very intuitive alignment. And since it absolutely, it's not like a negotiations where there's a winner and a loser. It's just a switching from a community that identifies more with Cobb rather than Middletown. Both of the LAPACs were amenable to that request.
Okay.
I can shed some light on that. So after the Valley Fire, when the Cobb Area Council started, it is on. Everyone's yelling at me.
I'm deaf.
That Cobb Area Council came together and drew their own lines of the community that they wanted to be organized as. And so that was one of the corrections, and the Siegler Springs was one of the corrections. So that's the area of the Cauberry Council. They worked, or I was on it back then, had conversations with math during then to redraw those boundaries, figure out the different areas. And then that is a community of interest, which was determined during the census, and then redistricting.
Yeah, I would like to talk to the Middletown area.
Yes. All planning area boundary recommendations came from in-person, in the location meetings. So the Middletown LAPAC, that was a really well-attended meeting, and they discussed that recommendation specifically, in person.
Okay.
All right, so we'll go ahead and open it up to the public unless you have something else.
Lastly, I just have the GPAC recommendations. Through the 2 GPAC meetings, they started looking at every single LAPAC recommendation, but then actually pivoted and sort of reaffirmed that they are the county-wide advisory committee rather than the local area plan. So one of their first recommendations, and since there was significant wordsmithing, I'm just going to read them real quick to you so I don't get them wrong. One was support all recommendations of planning area boundaries that had approval of the affected LAPACs. Encourage mixed use, including shared primary uses, commercial and residential, be added as an option within community growth boundaries for both new planned development and existing commercial areas. Encourage walkable neighborhood planning for multimodal transportation. Require congruence between community growth boundary amendments and ongoing sphere of influence reviews for public health and safety services. Encourage county policy to seek options to support mixed-use development, including removing governmental obstacles and seeking funding options. And then lastly, preserve the agriculture land use designated areas primarily used for food production and preserve resource conservation land use designated areas. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
All right, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone from the public that would like to talk about this? If you come up, speak into the microphone, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Crandall and Supervisors. My name's Margot Kambara. This is an extraordinary opportunity for Lake County to build the Lake County of our dreams today. And I'm very thankful for being granted a small role in this effort. I respectfully disagree with Director Turner's characterization of some of the GPAC's conclusions. GPAC did not endorse the LAPAC's recommendations as a whole. We reached a point where we found that we did not agree. But the decision was made that our recommendations from GPAC and those from the LAPACs would be presented to your body, to your board for your consideration. I personally think that that's a disservice to you because you're going to be bombarded with community input and as well as input from the LAPACs. I thought, and some of my other colleagues feel that the GPAC could be a better service to you if we could be a filter and to go offline and do some independent study groups if necessary, if appropriate, but at least to give you a more considered opinion on some of these recommendations. In particular, and I don't mean to nitpick, but some of the big objections were the loss of ag lands by piecemealing, by carving out the community growth boundaries, by some parcels being zoned previously as industrial. So that takes us onto the slow train of losing our ag lands, which our residents value so much as our agricultural nature and the small town feel of Lake County. If we're not careful, we can lose the agricultural nature of Lake County parcel by parcel by carving parts of a parcel out for development. And so I bring this to your attention. Also, if we find that the current grant structure is not meeting our needs, we're talking about the Lake County of our dreams. Maybe we should revisit the plan and the strategy for doing a general plan and local area plans that do justice for Lake County and its people. I also wanted to bring to your attention that there is strong support to preserving ag lands. I've been talking to community members, and they are concerned. I also want to bring it to the granularity of the Kelseyville area plan. While some community members see the value in that having higher density zoning near the schools, it makes sense. They don't recall that being discussed at a local area plan meeting. I've asked for the minutes or the meeting notes for the Kelsey area plan of meetings. I know Director Turner is very, very busy, and she has a ton of emails, I'm sure. But
Can you wrap up? Yeah.
this is a great opportunity. I hope we can take advantage of it. Thank you.
Real quick, I have a question, Margot, if you can. When you say you've been talking to them, who specifically is them?
There are some community members who have reached out to me, and they share concerns about our losing ag lands and, and how it's getting addressed during the local area plan meetings.
And so all different area plans, is anyone specific or?
Primarily in the Kelseyville area plan.
Okay, thank you.
But at the general at the general plan meeting, there was concern within the GPAC about the parcels in Lower Lake. So it's a theme across the county of lands that are zoned ag or can be used for ag, and if they get incorporated into the community growth boundary, well, once you lose ag lands, it's almost impossible to get them back into production.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have something to add? Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I want to still leave it open on the change in our boundaries in the Middletown area.
Did you want to?
Nothing is finalized until the board approves the general plan late next year.
Thank you.
All right, Supervisor Sabatier?
And that was going to be my question. We're not approving anything today. This is just a presentation of suggestions and recommendations. Our final approval is in the future, so just wanted to make sure that was...
Thank you.
I still have public comment open, so I'll go ahead and, if there's anyone else that would like to come and make comment? Anyone on Zoom? Bring it back to the board for final comment. Is there anyone else that has anything to add or any questions, or if there's anything you would like to finish with, or?
I wanted to express great appreciation to all the members that were appointed onto the LAPACs and the GPACs. We had quite a wild ride this last fall, just trying to get as much input as possible, and a lot of them hung in there. You know, we couldn't get every member at every meeting, but I really appreciate how willing they were to quickly respond to the doodle polls and to really take time to give us some really great input. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we'll go ahead and close this presentation. Is there direction? Do you have enough direction? I think that was listed on there.
The direction that I saw that got consensus was to take a look at the Blue Lakes R1 properties for
Anything
amendment.
else
I had asked about, and I believe there's been some applications come in. I don't know. They
Different
might be
item.
later in the agenda.
What's this about? What's your?
For the Middletown didn't have the total number of appointees.
The LAPAC?
Appointments for Middletown LAPAC
For
members is on a different agenda.
Okay. On, not today's,
Yeah.
or?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I think, did you have something?
I was just going to comment that
Go
the
ahead.
action was to receive the report.
Okay. Yeah, let's receive the report. We just need action.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to receive Lake County 2050 update.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 500. Thank you again.
Thank you.